Hey, welcome back to our reading of Escape Galapagos at the Florida Aquarium. Are you guys ready for another episode? If you remember, Ezzy and Luke and her father had just discovered that the bad guys that had hijacked the ship are poachers and they want to steal animals from the Galapagos. Now remember, if you have any questions, you can send them while I'm reading or tweet them to me at EL Prager. So they're on the island of Fernandina. Let's see what happens next. Giovanna, the naturalist, went back to the group and stopped them on what looked like a long slab of black pavement. But it was the strangest looking asphalt Ezzy had ever seen, topped by a series of big, twisted, ropey looking wrinkles. Giovanna spread her arms wide. This is a type of hardened lava called pahoihoi. It's a Hawaiian word and refers to its ropey texture. It forms as rivers and sheets of flowing lava, cool while moving over and around the land. Have any of you ever made chocolate pudding on a stove? Given the circumstances, Ezzy thought it was a very odd question. Grandpa Jones raised his hand. One of my favorites. Grandma Jones smiled, nodded, and added, "It is, especially at Christmas." Grandpa Jones threw up his hands jokingly. "See, even lava makes her think of Christmas." Giovanna smiled. "Well, this pahoehoe lava forms much like the skin on the surface of chocolate pudding as it begins to cool." "What?" Aiden said with his GoPro running. "How's that?" "Once the heat is turned off on the stove, the chocolate pudding begins to cool. At the surface, the pudding in contact with the air begins to cool faster than the pudding below, and a skin starts to form. If you tilt the pan, the surface skin doesn't flow smoothly, but it wrinkles and creates a sort of ropey texture. Same with pahoehoe lava. The surface starts cooling and hardening before the lava below it. As the lava flows over and around things, the hardening surface wrinkles and twists to form these ropey-looking rocks." "Excellent analogy, young lady," Grandpa Jones said, smiling. "Yeah, and how about some pahoehoe pudding for dessert?" Aiden added. Giovanna continued. "The other type of lava is much sharper and called ah-ah, because when you walk over it barefoot, you go ah, ah." Ezzy turned to Luke, thinking that might make him laugh. But he wasn't paying any attention. His focus was squarely on the men pretending to be naturalists. They were standing in front of the mangrove trees behind the group. It was the back of a sandy spit that spread out toward the ocean like a big fan. The men had just shot a couple of marine iguanas with red feathered tranquilizer darts. They were placing the now limp animals into bags for transport to the ship. Giovanna moved ahead, climbing a long ridge of black pahoehoe lava rock that ran along the side of the sandy spit. Aiden and the others followed. Dr. Schuyler grabbed Luke's hand and pulled him along. Ezzy trailed after them. Luke whispered to his father, "Dad, we have to do something. They're hurting the animals and stealing them." Dr. Schuyler squatted down and looked at his son apologetically. "I know, son. Right now, I'm more worried about you and your sister's safety. There's just not much we can do." They caught up with the others next to a patch of cactus that resembled golden-colored pudgy fingers covered in spines. Giovanna was talking. "This is lava cactus, one of the pioneer plants in the Galapagos. They are one of the very first things that can start growing on the lava rock." Ezzy winked at Luke. "Now that would hurt if you sat on it." Her brother hardly smiled. His attention was on two men with dart guns pointing to the rocks ahead of the group. Sitting atop the rocks were two skinny brown birds with small ragged wings, along with a penguin. The black and white penguin was only about 9 inches tall. As he stared at the penguin, it was so small and so cute. Then she realized what an easy shot the penguin would be, as he joined Luke in glaring at the dart-wielding men. Giovanna pointed ahead. "Oh, look, there are two flightless cormorants. Notice their small and mutated wings and thick, strong legs, and a Galapagos penguin." The naturalist jogged off the lava rock and walked briskly toward the animals. She stopped so that when the group caught up, they were standing between the men with the dart guns and the animals. As she started talking, the men strode purposely toward the group. Luke glared at them. Suddenly, he jumped up, flapped his arms, began waddling around in a circle and honking loudly, much like a female blue-footed booby. Startled by Luke's noisy antics, the cormorants and penguin hopped down the rocks, and dove into the ocean. Grinning, Luke stopped what he was doing and stood perfectly still. His father shrugged dramatically, shook his head, and said to the group, "Kids, what can you do?" As he knew that normally Giovanna would have said something to Luke about his behavior. Instead, she stood quietly and looked as if she was trying not to smile. Aidan and his sisters stared at Ezzy with raised eyebrows. She tried to think quickly of an excuse for her brother's little strange behavior. He likes to pretend like he's one of the animals. Remember the albatross? Dr. Schuyler leaned down and said loudly to Luke in an overly serious tone, "Son, you know the rules here. We need to keep our distance and be quiet so as not to disturb the animals." Winking, he ruffled his son's hair. "Okay, Dad, sorry," Luke said in an equally serious tone. "Let's keep going," Giovanna urged. As she walked, she pointed to the flightless cormorant now in the water nearby. The dark brown bird held its long, skinny neck and small head up out of the water and paddled with its wide, webbed feet. "Watch closely," she said. "The flightless cormorants are excellent at diving and fishing." When the cormorants first arrived in the Galapagos, they could fly like all the other cormorants in the world. But here in the Galapagos, there was so much food for them to eat, like fish and octopus, and so little competition from other birds and animals that they didn't need to fly between the islands to find a meal. Over time, the cormorants' wings mutated and they lost the ability to fly. So now they are the world's only flightless cormorants. For the next hour or so, the group hiked around the sandy spit watching sea lions, flightless cormorants, a few penguins, and of course, lots and lots of marine iguanas. The marine iguanas blended in so well with the lava rock, the hikers had to be careful not to step on them. At first, Ezzy was nervous and jumpy about all the animals. She watched carefully where she walked and made sure she didn't get very close to anything. But after a while, she realized that even when she got a little closer, the iguanas and other animals hardly noticed her. And she liked watching the penguins. They hopped around on the rocks and dove into the water, where they swam like undersea torpedoes zooming around. Then they'd pop up like corks, and the white feathers covering their little pudgy bellies gleamed in the sun like freshly fallen snow. Ezzy decided she could watch the penguins for hours without any sort of freakout. She also liked to see the flightless cormorants dive and then try to figure out where they would come up. She'd seen one come up with a fish that seemed way too big for it to eat. The bird must have tossed the fish into the air and caught it 10 times before it found a way to swallow it, which it did in one big gulp. Ezzy was sure the fish would get stuck in the bird's skinny neck, but amazingly, it went down without a problem. On the other side of the sandy spit, the group discovered a tiny sea lion pup suckling its mother. Ezzy thought she could even hear it slurping milk. She looked closer. The mother and pup weren't creepy or gross. In fact, the scene was kind of heartwarming. Ezzy stopped and looked around. Was it that the bad guys with guns had distracted her? Or that compared to them, the animals didn't seem so wild or dangerous anymore? Ezzy wasn't sure why she felt less nervous around the animals, but she was glad. She turned to her father and smiled, pointing to a sea lion posing for photos. Her father looked at her curiously. Then they both turned to Luke. He was once again doing his blue-footed booby impression, scaring away a few birds and iguanas so the men couldn't dart them. During the hike, Ezzy and her father had tried to hide his efforts from the fake naturalists scouting for animals, but they needn't have bothered. It was as if the word had spread quickly among the animals, and the poachers were having a hard time catching anything. By the time the group finished the hike and were loading into the Zodiac, the men looked tired, hot, and very frustrated. Once back on the stern of the Darwin Voyager, Dr. Schuyler pulled Luke and Ezzy aside. He squatted so that he was eye level with Luke. "Son, I know you want to help the animals, but I think from now on we better be a little more careful." Luke just nodded. Chapter 11, The Plan. That night's briefing was torture for Ezzy. All she could do was sit and pretend everything was fine, all the while wondering what was going to happen next and whether, once the bad guys had all the animals they wanted, they would leave. The presentation by the naturalists seemed to go on forever, and then she had to make it through dinner. Nothing looked appetizing. Afterwards, she and Luke sat with their father in their cabin. "So, tomorrow there's a hike and snorkeling in the morning," their father said. "Son, I think you'd better keep your antics to a minimum. The men with guns may not be so nice the second time around. We don't want anyone to get bent out of character or go rental on us." Luke and Ezzy stared at him. "Really, Dad?" Ezzy said. even now with the bad sayings? Better safe than worried, he added. Luke smiled, ugh, as he groaned. Come on, just trying to lighten things up a bit. What are they going to do to the animals? Luke asked. What about us? Ezzy added. I'm not sure about the animals, her father answered, but I think they'll leave once they get what they want. But Dad, Ezzy said, why not just catch the animals in their own boat and take off? Why use our ship? Not sure, Ez. Maybe they figured by tagging along with us. For the most part, it looks like a regular tourist cruise in case another ship or someone comes by. Do you really think they'll let us go? She asked. I think so. They haven't hurt anyone yet. Wish we could do more to help the animals, Luke said sadly. They could die. Dr. Schuyler turned to his son. I'm sure the animals will be fine. These guys can't sell them if they are badly hurt or dead. They need to take care of them. But I know how you feel, Luke. I wish we could do more to help too. However, your safety is my main concern. For a bit, they sat in silence. Luke pouted. Hey, there's a movie about the Galapagos being shown in the lounge, Dr. Schuyler said. Maybe that will take our minds off of things. I don't really feel like it, Dad, as he said. Luke just shook his head. No problem, their father replied. We can stay here and play cards or something. No, it's okay. You should go see the movie, as he told him. We'll stay here and hang out. I'm pretty tired. Yeah, you should go, Luke added quickly. Their father paused and then gave them the I'm serious look. Okay, but I want you two to promise to stay here and not go wandering around the ship. I'll be back soon and I want you here or asleep. Got it? Ezzy and Luke nodded. As soon as the door shut, Luke turned to his sister. We should try to help the animals, sis. Luke, you heard Dad. He said to stay here. Besides, he's right. They can't sell dead animals. I'm sure they're okay. We should at least try and look around and see if we can find them. We have no idea where these guys are holding the animals, and they have guns, Luke. Come on, sis, Luke pleaded, just to look to see if they're okay. Luke, if these bad guys don't kill us, Dad will. Luke stared at her with a pathetically pouty face. His chin quivered and his eyes began to well up. Please, he begged. No. A tear slid down his cheek. Please, sis. As he hated to see her brother cry. Luke, come on. It's going to be okay. Just a quick look around. Pretty, please. More tears threatened. Oh, okay. Just a quick look. She reluctantly cracked the door and peeked out into the corridor. It was empty. Most of the other passengers were in the lounge watching the movie. Ezzy and Luke tiptoed quietly past the lounge to the stairs and then crept up to the next deck. From there, they headed to the stern deck, thinking maybe the animals were near where they loaded on board. The deck was empty. When a couple of people came by, Ezzy and Luke pretended to be stargazing. Oh, look, there's the Milky Way, Luke said loudly. And Ezzy nudged her brother with an elbow, whispering, no need to overdo it. They reached the stern railing and looked over to see if there was anything on the deck below. But it was too dark to see much. Just then, the stringy-haired mustache dude came up the stairs. Ezzy and Luke went back to fake stargazing. The man seemed to hesitate when he saw them, but then continued on. Okay, we've looked around and no animals, Ezzy said. Let's go back. In response, and before she could grab him, Luke scampered down the stairs to the deck below. Ezzy grunted in frustration and ran after him. The back platform and lower deck were also empty, and there was still no sign of the animals. Luke pointed to another door with a small round window that had light filtering through. It was labeled crew only. As he shook her head. But before she could stop him, Luke raced through and was gone in a flash. Crap, she sprinted after him. The door led to a brightly lit, narrow corridor. Luke was nowhere in sight. Creeping down the passageway, as he glanced from side to side, she heard a sort of fluttering noise. It seemed to be coming from an open doorway up ahead and to the right. As he tiptoed to the doorway and peeked through, the light in the passageway spilled into the room, illuminating what was inside. A bunch of tightly packed and stacked metal cages and wooden crates with holes in them. As he moved cautiously into the room for a better look, some of the cages were empty. Others had miserable, ragged-looking animals inside. And there was Luke standing beside a small metal cage with a trembling albatross crammed inside. The large bird was sitting with its head and long neck bent awkwardly forward. Its entire body shook and some of its feathers poked out through the openings in the cage. Luke had his hand in the cage to stroke the sad-looking albatross as he whispered to it, clearly trying to calm the bird. Next to them was a cage full of marine iguanas. Beside that, one containing 2 blue-footed boobies. One bird appeared to have an injured wing. The room was stifling hot and smelled even worse than sea lion surprise. "It's awful," Luke cried, tears streaming down his face. "Look how small the cages are, and some of the animals are hurt. We have to help them." As he knew they should turn and run, get out of there as fast as they could. But Luke was so upset. It was terrible to see the animals hurt and crammed into the small cages. She hesitated, trying to decide what to do. "Come on, sis," Luke pleaded. Okay. Let's figure out how to open the cages, but we have to make it quick before anyone comes." Luke nodded and began working on the cage with the albatross. Ezzy went to the one holding the blue-footed boobies. She found the latch and was just jiggling it when she heard a strange noise, almost like a low growl. Luke popped up from behind the albatross's cage, and Ezzy turned toward the sound. A man stood in the doorway, silhouetted in the light. His hands were on his hips. "What's going on in here?" he asked. His face was obscured in shadow, but Ezzy recognized his voice immediately. "Help us free them," urged Luke. "Come on, before anyone else comes." The man strode into the room. A big guy followed and stood nearby with his legs spread wide and a look on his face that suggested he might enjoy a late-night 2-kid snack. As he turned to her brother, "I don't think he wants to help us free the animals." "Why not?" Luke said. "Come on, help us." "I knew you were trouble," the man snapped. "The 2 of you. I heard what went on the island, little Master Luke's games to scare away the animals." Luke still seemed confused. "Luke," as he said, "he's one of them, one of the bad guys." The man bristled. "Not one of them. These are my men." "What?" Luke said. Why are you doing this?" "Why do you think?" Luke stared hard at the man, whose leg seemed to have healed miraculously. "Money. It's all about money," as he said. "You're going to sell the animals to the highest bidder." "Oh, my dear, nothing as pedestrian as that. This is the Galapagos. Many of the animals are the only of their kind in the world. And this place annually draws hundreds of thousands of visitors, paying visitors." Luke and Ezzy looked at one another questioningly. "Think, kids, didn't you ever see the movie Jurassic Park?" "You're going to create a Galapagos park somewhere else," said Ezzy. "Very good, that's right. With a few animals and their DNA, I can clone them and create my very own private wildlife park unlike anything else in the world. I can even create new hybrid animals, my own Darwinian evolution. It'll be natural selection on my terms, John's own survival of the fittest." This guy is nuts, as he thought. Total bonkers. "People will pay big bucks to come to my park and not have to deal with all the rules and regulations here. Plus, with climate change, invasive species, and all the other problems humans are bringing to the Galapagos, who knows how long this place will last. I may even be able to genetically create new species that are more resistant to the rising heat and other human-made threats. I will be doing the world a great favor by conserving these species for future generations. Scientists will applaud my efforts, be awed by my results, and appreciate what I had to do to make it happen, even if I have to bend the rules a little." As he shook her head, "Stealing animals isn't exactly bending the rules a little." Luke stared at John. "You're hurting them. My dad says these animals belong here with the others of its kind." "Yeah, and besides, nobody will think you're doing the world a great service," as he added. "Geez, what a bunch of baloney. Besides, you're gonna get caught." "Oh, young lady, don't you think I've thought this through? Hispaniola and the other islands were a bonanza of animals, all for the taking. Albatross and boobies. They are so used to people, it was like stealing candy from a baby. I didn't even realize how easy it would be. With so many animals up for grabs, I needed another, preferably bigger ship. And with all of you on board, it makes for good cover. After tomorrow's big prize, the capture of a giant tortoise, along with some sea turtle eggs and a few land iguanas, my speedboats will come to ferry us and the animals out to my partner's ship in international waters before anyone can stop us." "What about us and all the people on the ship?" as he asked nervously, not sure she really wanted to know the answer. "Once we're gone, you're on your own." As he stared at him suspiciously, was he telling the truth? Were they going to just leave the ship and not hurt anyone? "Come on," John said. "I think it's time we go have a little chat with your father. What was it, cabins 310 and 312? The man's goon followed behind and marched them out of the room. Ezzy knew they were in deep doo-doo in oh so many ways. This guy John wouldn't have to kill him. Their father would take care of that for him. Chapter 12, A Bad Bedtime Story. Using a master card key, John opened the cabin door and let Ezzy and Luke inside. The other passengers were still in the lounge watching the movie. Sit, he ordered, sitting on the bed with her brother. Ezzy grabbed Luke's hand and held it tight. She stared at John and her anger grew. She was so mad it overshadowed her fear. She didn't even realize she was squeezing Luke's hand tighter and tighter until he nudged her and said, "Ouch." She released her grip. "Sorry." They sat in silence. Luke was near to tears. Ezzy was tense and continued to glare angrily at John. Soon they heard someone swipe a card key to unlock the door. Seconds later, Dr. Schuyler strode into the room. At first, he saw only his kids sitting on the bed. "What's wrong? Why are you two still up?" Then he noticed the others in the room. "John, what are you doing here? And who's this guy?" "Have a seat," John ordered. Clearly puzzled, Dr. Schuyler sat on the other bed. John smoothed his now slicked back hair. He had on a pink polo shirt and neatly pressed khaki pants. "I'd hoped to keep this all quite civilized, but as soon as I met your daughter, I should have known she was trouble. I even told her to go hide as a test to see if my men could find her." He nodded to his crusty associate. "Hard to get good help out here." The other man scowled. "What's this all about? Why are you in my cabin?" "You invited me, remember?" John added arrogantly. "But more to the point, your two little darlings here have been snooping around the ship, and I don't like it. I found them in with my animals, who, by the way, need their rest for the long journey ahead." "What?" Dr. Schuyler said, staring at his kids. He then turned back to John. "Your animals? Now, here's what's going to happen next. Either you all cooperate, or you'll be locked in here due to an unexplained and quite possibly fatal injury. I assume you'll choose the former. So tonight, you will stay in your cabins and get a good night's rest." "Ha!" as he blurted out. "And tomorrow, you're going to pretend everything is fine. You'll go out on the hike and snorkel in the morning and enjoy all the wonders of the Galapagos. After that, we'll leave the ship and be out of your way. But if there's any more bad behavior, snooping, or scaring the animals off, things will not be so pleasant." John headed for the door, then paused, turning back. "Just remember, you're a doctor, aren't you?" "Surgeon. In that case, I could use your help with some of the animals we've already collected. I'm afraid my men are not the most gentle, and some have gotten banged up. The ship's doctor could be used your help." I'm sorry, I haven't gotten your name." "Schuyler, Dr. Schuyler." "Well, Dr. Schuyler, tomorrow morning you'll be staying on the ship to help with the animals, while your two lovely children here go out for a hike. I'm not a veterinarian." "Close enough. Besides, having you on board with me might help keep these two clowns in line. Wouldn't want anything to happen to Daddy, now would we?" Ezzy wanted to jump up and strangle the man. Her father must have known what she was thinking as he put a firm hand on her leg. "I'll let Giovanna know that you kids will be going out with her in the morning and that your father will be staying on board. Sleep tight and don't let the bed bugs bite." With a cackling laugh, he left, shutting the door. For a moment, they sat in stunned silence. Then Dr. Schuyler turned to Ezzy and Luke. "What's this about you two snooping around the ship?" Ezzy had hoped he'd forgotten about that. "Come on, Dad, we've got bigger problems." She then told him what John said in the storage room about his plans. "Do you really think he's going to leave once they have all the animals they want?" "First off," he said, "I thought I told you two to sit tight." Luke stared at the floor like a dog with its tail between its legs. Looking directly at Ezzy, Dr. Schuyler added, "You're the oldest, Esmeralda. You should know better." "Yeah, Dad, I know. I screwed up, and I'm really sorry. But what do you think this guy's going to do with us?" Staring at Luke, he hesitated before saying, "Hopefully, just as he said. They'll leave once they have all the animals he wants." "Okay, Luke, you get ready for bed, and tomorrow I want you to behave and do everything Ezzy tells you to." Luke nodded. "Ezzy, come on. Let's get you into your cabin and to bed as well." Ezzy hugged Luke tightly, whispering, "It's going to be okay." She wanted to believe it. Her father led her into the other cabin. He sat on the bed and stared at her. I know, Ezzy said, "I messed up." "I know you know, Ezzy. That's not what I want to talk to you about." He patted the bed next to him, and she sat down. "It's about tomorrow. I don't really think this guy is going to just leave with his animals." I said that for Luke. I doubt the man's going to want to leave a ship full of witnesses behind. She nodded nervously. Tomorrow, I want you to talk to Giovanna. I want you to find a place for you and Luke to either hide or run away to. If Giovanna and the others want to go with you, that's fine. But what's most important is that you do not come back to this ship. But Dad, what about you? I'll be fine. I'll find a way to get off the ship. I'm a strong swimmer. If we can find a place to wait until another ship comes by, we'll be fine. I'll give you my backpack in the morning, and we'll pack as much as we can in it. Ask Giovanna if there's another landing site nearby, and if you can, go there. Her voice quivered. We can't just leave you here. You have to, honey. And you're going to have to be brave and set an example for Luke. Don't tell him until you have to. A big lump formed in Ezzy's throat. She nodded. You can do this. Just remember, whatever happens, do not come back to this ship. I'll jump off and swim in. Maybe you can leave a message somehow to let me know where you are. Okay, she muttered. Her father then hugged Ezzy super tight. I love you, Ez, and your mom would be so proud of you. I know you can do this. You just have to believe it yourself. I love you too, Dad, said Ezzy, trying hard not to cry. You have to make it to shore. Luke needs you. I need you. After another long hug, her father left to go sleep with Luke in their cabin. Ezzy lay in bed thinking she'd never fall asleep. She was scared and wasn't sure she could do what her father was asking of her. Then she thought about the men on the ship, her family and the animals being hurt and kidnapped. Soon her fear turned back to anger and then determination. She couldn't let John hurt her family. She had to be brave, just like her father said. And like her mother, she had to do whatever it would take to keep Luke safe and to meet up with her dad, even if it meant hugging iguanas or swimming with sharks. And maybe, just maybe, she could also find some way to stop John and ruin his nutcase plan. At some point, Ezzy must have dozed off because the phone in the cabin started ringing and woke her up. She reached over and grabbed it. Time to wake up for another wonderful day here in the Galapagos. It was John. She hung up as fast as she could. Jerk. Well, that's it for today. The action is heating up. Looks like Ezzy and Luke are going to have to go out to the island without their father tomorrow because John is going to hold his father on board captive. A lot more animals coming up also. So stay tuned. And if you have any questions, don't forget, you can send them to us on Facebook or to me at Twitter at EL Prager. We got lots more animals coming up. We've got, there might be something with that. Remember about that earthquake? I wonder what that means. So thanks again for everybody. I hope you're enjoying the story. We'll see you next time. Bye.